Hey sis, each month inside Entrusted Women University, we feature a brand new interview. You can watch the full interview only in Entrusted Women University, but you can check out this snippet right now.
There. I met him at that place of what he wanted, and then shared with him, well, this is what I would like. How about we merge these two, or we come together and make this work? And so, practically speaking, let me just give you, and this may be just trivial for some people, but I'm just going to be honest. For him, he was like, when the kids go to bed, I want to just have your attention for like an hour or two. That's it. That's all I want. Like, and Kia, we're talking about like just sitting on the couch watching TV together. But he wanted my full attention, even though our attention was to the TV or to a show or a movie or whatever. He wanted to be right next to me with his arm around me and us having that quality time. That's it.
Wow.
And so it wasn't even about like having the house clean or whatever. It was more than that. It was like the quality time. It's what his love language, what he needed. Mm-hmm. So when his tank was full, because again, my priority is my marriage. Without that, then what's the point, right? And whatever I do on a platform does not matter. This is my first and foremost calling. Those kids are going to leave the house and there's going to be me and this man. And if I'm sitting across from this stranger and I don't know who he is and I don't know why we're together, then what's the point? So
Hi, Entrusted Women. I hope that you are doing well. I am super psyched today to introduce you to another new friend, Karen Harmon. Hey, Karen, how are you?
It's so good to see you and be here with you all.
I know, right? It's great to see you not on social media, but to see you like in reality. Well, I guess that is reality, but anyway, you know what I mean. So you guys may have seen Karen before. She's been on such platforms as Propel Women or TBN's Better Together. And so I'm excited to have her with Entrusted Women. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And just in case you don't know Karen, if I'm introducing her to you, I want to share her bio with you so you have a frame of reference. And then we're going to dive into our discussion for today. So Karen is actually a physical therapist. It's funny how God moves and shifts us to ministry, but it has absolutely nothing to do with what we majored in. She's a physical therapist and a homeschool mom who also serves her local church on the worship team as a lead over several small groups and in the media department doing on-camera work and voiceover. So that's a mouthful. She does a lot of service in the church. She has a master's degree in physical therapy and owns Function 360 Physical Therapy and Wellness, which provides specialized physical rehabilitation and wellness consultations for a variety of patients. Karen has spoken at conferences and seminars and has sat on several live event and curriculum panels discussing anything from leadership to motherhood and ministry, which actually I was at a Propel Women event in Atlanta, and I heard you on a platform. I know, small world. Let me see where I lived. Okay, so she occasionally writes at KarenHarmon360.com, and I'll provide that link for you in the description section of this video, and has contributed several articles for various publications and websites. With transparency and humor, because we need that, Karen loves to encourage and empower women to passionately pursue Jesus and their God-given dreams. Yes and amen. Yes. Purpose and callings through all of their many roles. Karen and her husband Lee have been married for 16 years and have 3 amazing children and reside in Dallas, Texas. Awesome. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, of course. And you know what? I did not realize you were in Dallas. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas.
Oh,
just down the road. Most people do not know Fort Worth because that's kind of like the country sister cousin.
They get no love. It's not right.
People know the DFW Metroplex or Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, but when you say Fort Worth, it's like Fort who?
Yeah, so, that's the FW part of DFW.
Right, that's the FW. It's like, oh, okay. Anyway, so as you can tell from Karen's bio, she has her foot in a little bit of everything, in ministry, in business, in motherhood, and in marriage. So we're going to talk about all the things because it can really be overwhelming when you're trying to tackle all of these different aspects of a woman's life. So tell me a little bit about your business background, Karen.
Well, my business background, I have a bachelor's in health and exercise science, pre-physical therapy from Oral Roberts University, and then got my master's in physical therapy at UT Southwestern here in Dallas. I've been a PT, a physical therapist, for almost 18 years, mainly in the outpatient orthopedic setting. And then I started my own practice in 2019, which was so a God thing. God had just brought a woman in my life that encouraged me to do it. And we took the plunge, and it has been amazing and has been such a blessing in my life to do that. And so that's basically how it started. So I've actually only owned my own business for almost 2 years now.
Wow.
And then, of course, with worship ministry, I've been doing that for, goodness, over 25 years or so. That tells you how old I am. But we've been doing that. And then, of course, with physical therapy, like I said, I started, back in 2003, and mainly worked in the outpatient setting for several years. And that gave me kind of my legs to be able to be confident and start my own business a couple of years ago.
Okay, wow. So one might say, if you're a physical therapist, how on earth did you find yourself in writing and speaking spaces? Like, how does that even happen?
I know that would be like a whole other hour long, amazing God testimony, but just to shorten it a little bit, writing and speaking was not even on my radar at all. I think some women, that's something they want to do and aspire to do. And honestly, it wasn't something I had ever even thought about doing. And several years ago, I had a relative ask me to come speak at a seminar for healthcare providers. Yeah. And just talk about physical therapy. And I was like, no, I don't talk in front of people. I lead worship. That's what I do. I lead worship. I sing. I try not to talk. Like, that's just not my thing. She's like, well, just share about physical therapy. And I did that. And afterwards, even though I was terrified, afterwards, I was like, wow, I really enjoyed that. Okay, great. And I shelved it, never thought about it again. And then several years later, our church was asked to do worship for a nationally touring women's conference. Mm-hmm. And so they asked me to go and be a part of that worship team. And in that process, those 2 years, I got to know several faith-based Christian speakers and Christian writers, and got involved with Propel Women, like you had mentioned earlier. And through that, through their founder and some of their leadership, they really encouraged me to start writing for their blog, their online weekly blog, newsletter. And so I started writing for that. And then that led to sitting on a panel for their live events, and then sitting on a panel for their curriculum tapings, which then led to other TV things and led to other seminars and conferences. And, I'm just going to be real here. It's not something that I still am like, yes, let's do it. Like, I still get a little nervous. I still get a little terrified, having to be there. I don't like being the center of attention. I don't like being on a platform. I actually love to work in obscurity. I feel like I do my best work there. And so the Lord has just kind of opened these doors, and I'm just trying to walk in obedience to what He's put in front of me. So
fascinating, and so like God to do the antithesis of what we think we were put on the earth to do, or what we believe we are called to do, or even equipped to do, to put you in those spaces. I mean, it's just fascinating. Now, me, on the other hand, I love to be the center of attention. I love all of it. I do get nervous. I get nervous when the attention is on me, but I'm saying it's interesting because I had such a desire to speak and write for such a long, long time. Like, I can remember feeling an urge in high school, maybe even middle school. And for me, God said, sit down somewhere.
Wow.
Sit down somewhere and be humbled. Yeah. And I'm going to cultivate the circumstances of your life so that you can experience humility, which I am grateful for, but it was tough, so it's just so interesting how God, He's sovereign. He knows every person, and He has a purpose and a plan for all of us that we would not choose on our own. So good. Okay. So with that, you talked a little bit about diving into, unexpected ministry. Mm-hmm. Was that a struggle for you, balancing work, children, husband, when you found yourself on television? Like, how do you do that? Dinner still has to be made. Littles have to be put into bed. People have homework and projects and all of this.
Yeah. So I'll give a quick caveat to the women that are watching. This is not perfection. Like what you see here, there's no perfection happening. I still yell at my kids. My husband and I still get in fights. I still overbook myself, and there's moments of stress and tears. I am coming from a place of continuing to learn as well. I don't think any of us have mastered it. So I know when I used to hear women like me, I used to be like, well, that's great. They have it all together. I don't. And so I want to put anybody who's watching at ease that I do not have this all together. But through the years, I have learned a few things that have helped as far as strategy and practical systems and things like that, which we'll talk about it later. But going back to your question about like balancing it all, like how, and I think that is a question we have dealt with for decades, centuries, maybe even, I don't know. But for me personally, I don't like the term balance, because I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on me for like perfection. And that like every one of my roles has to be equal, like on a seesaw, right? Like to have that perfect balance on a seesaw, you have to have the same amount of weight on both sides. And my roles don't carry the same amount of weight on both sides. So I always tell people, I'm like, I don't balance it well, but what I try to do is prioritize as best as I can. So, my marriage, my motherhood, my children, they will always be the priority to me. I personally am of the belief system that if things aren't well at home, I have no business being on a platform. I have no business being on a stage. I have no business being in front of a camera if things are not great at home. And again, I'm not saying they're perfect, but I want to make sure that my family and my children know that they are the priority, that they don't grow up, my children especially, hating ministry. And then in turn, that makes them despise the Lord. Like, wait a minute, why would this God who's supposed to be loving and all-knowing and caring, why doesn't he care enough to have my mom be at home more? So I always want them to know that they're the priority, my husband and my children. And then for me, after that, it's my career in ministry, because ministry is not equal to God, right? Ministry is what I do. It's not whose I am. And so keeping that priority in check has really helped. And I think also merging my callings. So for example, as a worship leader, I serve at church. We go to a fairly large church. We have multiple services. So a lot of times when I'm serving on the worship team, I'm gone 12 to 14 hours between Saturday and Sunday. It's insane. Wow. And so a lot of times I'll take the girls with me, my older two. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, two girls, and then we have a little boy who's 2. But I try to take the 13-year-old and 10-year-old with me. They've gone with me on ministry trips. They've come and seen me do worship. They've come and seen me speak. So they understand, like, what is it that's pulling mom away? And this is a family thing. Like, we're all in this together. We come, my husband and I, we sit down. I'm like, babe, this is what I have coming up. Is this okay? Is it not? How does it work with your schedule? And again, it's not always perfect. Even just taping this, like 5 minutes before I got on, he's like, oh, I have to get on a call, and so we're trying to juggle and trying to figure out, well, who's going to watch the 2-year-old, so, okay, let's stick him in front of a movie. So, here's hoping that somebody doesn't come through this door here in a minute. So there's ways that we can merge it, right? Physical therapy, as a therapist, when I was working full time before I owned my own business, there was still a longing to do ministry, right? I think those of us that love the Lord, we want to share the hope of our salvation. We want to share the love of Jesus, whether that's on a platform in our daily life. And so I found this struggle a little bit of like, well, how do I merge this ministry desire? Not so much the speaking and the writing on a platform, but a ministry desire. How do I do that with my career? And the Lord opened doors where I got to pray with patients, right? I got to lead patients to the Lord. We've been able to build connection where I've been able to even provide services pro bono to those that are less fortunate who need physical therapy but can't afford it. So there's ways that we can merge our calling to help what we would say balance, but not really balance, but more like prioritize in those ways. And then God is so faithful to open those doors to provide the avenues to do it.
That's so wonderful. I actually heard someone use the term harmony as opposed to balance, making the analogous relationship between like music and how in an orchestra or in a jazz band, you're going to have certain instruments that take a more dominant role in that composition than maybe another instrument, and just evaluating the seasons in a woman's life where, when you have littles, Lord have mercy, Jesus. And I'm just encouraging you from afar, if you have littles in your home, that season of your life, you are, 80, 95, 99.2% of your life is going to be monopolized with mothering. Yes. But then as they become more independent, then that might look like 80% mothering, 20%, I don't know, still keeping in line that, it's God, then husband, then kids, then whatever else, but yeah, discarding this idea of balance, because it's just difficult to do. Did you ever deal with any mom guilt at all?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that's one of the many challenges, that we face as moms is feeling this feeling like we're not enough, right?
Mm.
So when we are working, we're feeling like, man, I should be home with my children more, and then when we're home with our kids, it's like, man, I should be doing more for our home and bringing in an income, or man, I know God's gifted me to do this ministry or this speaking or this writing or these other callings, and I'm wasting it. I'm not doing it, And so I do feel like there's this thing that the enemy tries to put on us as moms to hinder us from fulfilling the purposes and callings. And he uses the very beautiful gift of motherhood to do that, to keep a thumb on us and say, well, you can only do this, you can only do that. And to your point, I think there's seasons, right? We all have been in those places when there's littles. I wouldn't be doing all that I'm doing right now when I had the tiny little babies, okay? Like, there's just no way. And that's okay. And it's not even that I put it on the back burner. I just found different ways to do it.
Sure.
Right. So especially now with everything being online, goodness, there's so many avenues. There's so many ways that we can share the love of Jesus and do the things that we do. And so I think when you go in the terms of mom guilt, getting rid of those feelings that we're not enough. I think sometimes we buy that narrative, and I think it's a beautiful narrative and it's an encouraging narrative that you hear you're enough, you're enough. But on the caveat of that, on the other side of that, here's my problem with the narrative you are enough. I feel like when things go wrong and when we feel like we're failing and that mom guilt sets in, then we're even harder on ourselves because we're like, wait, I'm supposed to be enough. So wait a minute, if I'm enough, then why do I feel like a failure? But we get the peace of Jesus. In him, with him, through him, we are enough. Greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. So I think when we bring the Lord inside and the Lord with us, next to us, guiding us in all of our callings and all of the things he's asking us to do, then that mom guilt isn't as big of an issue. Do we still battle it every now and then? Absolutely. I think that's just human. But then realizing that when we do it with the Lord by our side, he's got it. It's going to be
so good. That's so good. And the other thing that I was thinking about, I really admire how you and your husband have created some systems where you're sitting down, you're going over your calendar. But I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, that my whole ministry aspirations or desire to do this and do that, has at times become a point of contention sometimes, in my own marriage where we've had to work it out. It's a lot better now. It's a lot better now. And we're okay that I'm doing this interview. He's okay with me. I want to say that. But I've heard it from other women too, where their husbands are like, what are you doing? And is it going to make any money? Or, you spend a lot of time with that. What are you doing? Can you relate at all, or what type of encouragement would you offer a woman who's in that place?
Well, I think for us, and this is what you see with my husband being supportive was not always the case. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot of growing, and it took a lot of learning. It took a lot of counseling. It took a lot of personal counseling, individual counseling, and us together, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's highly necessary and needed.
Yes, I agree.
But going back, and let me unpack this just a little bit, because I do think that this is a real issue where it's like, well, great, Karen, you have a supportive husband. Well, no wonder you can do all the things. And that is partly true. However, it was not always the case. So going back to when it was not the case, one thing that I think helped was showing him that when I walked in the fullness of who God created me to be, I was a better wife. I was a better mom. I was happier. And we all know that if mama's happy,
everybody's happy.
But when mama's not happy, nobody's happy, right? So I think that once he started to see that, and it wasn't even about the monetary thing, right? Because you and I both know we do a lot of things for free, right? We do a lot of things because we do love the Lord and we want to share the hope of his salvation and the things that he's done in our lives. I want to encourage and empower women, and that doesn't always come with a paycheck. Sometimes
Sure.
it does, sometimes it doesn't. And so, but I am fulfilling part of who God created me to be. And so when he started to see that, and then he started to see that I was more joy filled, that wow, I still was doing all the things that my children needed, that he needed, that I was still present for him. I also sat down with him and asked him, what is it that you want? Right? I think sometimes we're so big on, well, this is what I want to do. This is what God has called me to do. And I need you to come alongside of this. And we expect them to do this. And I had to sit down with them and be like, okay, babe, what is it that you want? You know, what is it? What is your expectation? What is your desire? And when he shared that with me, I met him there. I met him at that place of what he wanted. And then shared with him, well, this is what I would like. How about we merge these two, or we come together and make this work? And so practically speaking, let me just give you, and this may be just trivial for some people, but I'm just going to be honest. For him, he was like, when the kids go to bed, I want to just have your attention for like an hour or two. That's it. That's all I want. Like, and Kia, we're talking about like just sitting on the couch watching TV together. But he wanted my full attention, even though our attention was to the TV or to a show or a movie or whatever. He wanted to be right next to me with his arm around me and us having that quality time. That's it.
Wow.
And so it wasn't even about like having the house clean or whatever. It was more than that. It was like the quality time. It's what his love language, what he needed. So when his tank was full, because again, my priority is my marriage. Without that, then what's the point, right? And whatever I do on a platform does not matter. This is my first and foremost calling. Those kids are going to leave the house and it's going to be me and this man. And if I'm sitting across from this stranger and I don't know who he is and I don't know why we're together, then what's the point? So really finding a place to meet your husband and go, babe, what is it that you want? And you'll find a lot of times they don't know. They don't know.
Wow.
They just know what they want from you, but they don't know what they want for themselves. And then
I hope you enjoyed that interview snippet, and I want you to be sure and check out Entrusted Women University by visiting membership.entrustedwomen.com to see the interviews in their entirety. And join us next week for more content to help you on your writing and speaking journey.